Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good Tuesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you for Alaska Weather tonight. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information, and you can do that easily by visiting us on our Alaska Weather information line that has all of your forecasts just at the touch of a finger there. And dial it up and remember that number to use it again next time, and you won't have to listen to all the prompts. You can always go to our website, weather.gov/Alaska/Fairbanks/Juneau or /Anchorage. That'll get you your weather information any part of the state there. There's lots of different tools from satellite and radar and current observations and maps, as well as an option to use on your mobile device if the web version is a little bit too heavy for your broadband experience, whether you're in the village or in the city, doesn't matter. There's lots of different options to get the information you want. If you can't find that, please let me know, and my team will be happy to help you at nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov. That'll reach the entire TV Desk team. And again, we'll be happy to help direct you to the information you're looking for or answer weather questions that you may have about what you're seeing where you are. Here's a look at the weather tonight. The worst weather looks like it's going to be up around the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. As we get into the next half hour or so and into the rest of the evening, the winds are going to come up across places like Kaktovik in the eastern Beaufort Seacoast region. As a result of that and snow that's expected to fall, perhaps as much as 3 inches or so, we're going to see some blizzard conditions there. Winds may come up to about 40 miles per hour, and you're going to see gusts upwards of 60 miles per hour. That means any snow and snow on the ground will likely move into drifts, and visibility will be greatly reduced, probably below a quarter mile and maybe even to whiteout conditions, and that could go all the way from 6 o'clock tonight until 6 o'clock tomorrow night. So if you're in Kaktovik and the surrounding regions in the eastern Beaufort Seacoast for the next 24 hours or so, the weather's not going to be so nice. Be careful, have a plan, and if you have to go outside, make sure that you and somebody that you care about knows that you're coming and going and arriving safely. Let everybody know when you get there, okay? Here's a look at the satellite picture across the region. We're still watching a lot of cold air massing up around the Chukchi coast, and this is moving toward the coastline tonight. For now, though, we've got a lot of dry conditions across a good chunk of the interior, southwest, south central, but moisture is gathering around the region, and as we go ahead into the next several days, we'll be seeing some of the changes starting to move southward as a result of that. As we look at southeast, you'll notice drier air is still sitting across some parts of the eastern Gulf Coast. We have moisture moving northward. That will gradually be pulling that way toward the end of the week. But the big picture I think that'll be changing is the colder air that's dropping southward across the west coast. Now, as you look at the satellite picture with the fronts laid over it, you'll notice there's the cold front. Out ahead of it, we've got a few spots of snow across the Chukchi coast and the St. Lawrence Island region. And across the northern coast, already reports of blowing snow there. That wind is going to pick up again tonight as the front moves slowly south and east. The winds will be constricted across the eastern coast, and as a result, they could come up to about 40 miles per hour with stronger gusts to 60 as we head into the overnight hours. Across the western portions of Canada and almost to the Alcan, we've got a very strong high pressure system there, about 1,030 millibars or even higher in some cases. Out across the Gulf, high pressure still in charge. A small disturbance in the upper atmosphere right now is starting to create snow across the YK Delta. This will hover in the region throughout tonight and into tomorrow, and it doesn't seem to put down a whole lot of snow right now, but it looks like it will linger as we go into Wednesday morning, so keep your eye on that. And out across the northern Pacific, we've got another front slowly lifting northward. That's really not going to move very much overnight and into tomorrow morning. Low pressure develops in the lee of the Prince William Sound region, and as wind has been moving southward, we're still having kind of a dry zone around the Cook Inlet region as well as the Kenai Peninsula, and you'll notice that southeast is still in a drier area as well. The moisture out here across the northern Gulf is going to start creeping eastward, but you'll notice most of that's going to hover very close to the coast, if not just a little bit inside the outer coast for the next couple of days. Most areas in southeast still seem to stay fairly dry for now. So where's all the activity? It's up north. The eastern Beaufort Seacoast has the winds. Snow will be falling across a large part of the North Slope and the Chukchi Coast for that matter. And more people than not will be dealing with much colder weather as we work through the rest of the week and into the weekend, especially if you're in the West Coast or any of the southwestern villages there. Plan on colder weather coming your way. Across the central and western chain, there's still periods of rainfall across the western islands for the most part, and the Pribilofs are watching for snow showers there. Now that upper level disturbance we were talking about that wasn't really on the map as we were looking at today's surface chart is now turning into a cold front. There have been waves of colder air working their way southward, and that cold air gets a little more organized as we get into Wednesday, and it develops a surface area of low pressure here around southwestern Alaska. Because of that, there's a better chance for some snow showers in the morning, especially across some of the Bristol Bay communities and north and west to not quite Amonic, but certainly to Bethel. Across the north and eastern Gulf, pockets of rain and rain mixed with snow will be possible. There's a better chance for seeing light snow showers across northern parts of southeast and into the Prince William Sound region. Across the interior, we'll see a few snow showers, generally north of Fairbanks. That colder air, at least the coldest, will still be north around the Brooks Range and trying to work its way southward into the Yukon Valley by Wednesday afternoon. As we get into Thursday, the coldest air is still sliding to the east and southeast into western Canada, but a lot of that will have made its way into southwestern Canada as the front falls apart. Because of that, snow and the northerly winds will start to shift a little bit further southward toward the Alaska Peninsula. Don't be surprised, places like Port Heiden, Pilot Point, and all the way out toward Cold Bay, maybe as far west as False Pass, and maybe even Dutch Harbor, you'll start to see a chance for some more clouds, maybe some snow showers. The best chance for more steadier precipitation will be across the chain, of course, in the western Bering Sea. But anywhere from, let's say, the Gulf of Anadyr through the Pribilofs, through Dutch Harbor and Unalaska, we'll be dealing with much colder weather as we get toward the end of the week. Across the northern interior, you'll notice the arrows that are crossed here. That is a sign for blowing snow, and that certainly means that wind will be in your region. So any snow that's on the ground or in the air will be reducing visibility as it moves across, and a lot of that will be occurring generally from Fairbanks and northward and across the North Slope. Snow will still be falling across the eastern Beaufort Seacoast, and throughout the day on Thursday, it still looks like we'll be dealing with some gusty conditions there, so that blizzard warning will be in effect from tonight and into tomorrow. Here's a look at current conditions today. You'll notice in southeast, lower to mid 30s for most of the Panhandle. A few areas around Petersburg and southward saw temperatures in the 20s for a good chunk of the afternoon. Hyder was 25, up around Haines, 27 degrees, 36 in Sitka, the capital city, above freezing this afternoon. Prince William Sound had temperatures this afternoon around 29 there in Valdez, 32 in Cordoba, above freezing for Portage and into Seward, 35 for Homer, 16 though in Kenai, and temps were in the upper teens around Anchorage. Talkeetna was only 38 degrees today. It was -2 in Fairbanks and 1 above in Eagle. Fort Yukon had 11 below, 3 above in Arctic Village, 2 below around Kaktovik, and 14 above for Barrow. In the Kotzebue Sound region, temperatures stretched from about 5 to 10 below to about 10 above in Shishmaruk. Nome was showing 2 above at 3 o'clock, 14 in Gamble. And around Norton Sound, temperatures were generally from about 0 to 5 or so. Nome had 2 again, 11 in Bethel. McGrath was in positive territory, but just by 3 degrees or so, and Russian Mission had 5. In the Bristol Bay region, temps were in the mid-20s to lower 30s from Dillingham to King Salmon, and lower to mid-30s across the Alaska Peninsula. Kodiak Island was just shy of 40 degrees by late afternoon. 26 in St. Paul, 32 in St. George, and temps were in the mid-30s to lower 40s for the central and western chain. Overnight low temperatures are expected to be in the teens and 20s for a large part of the Kuskokwim Valley into the Alaska Peninsula. St. Paul is expected to see a low of 22 tonight, about 10 near Kenai, 31 in Kodiak. Southeast, look for temps in the teens and 20s. As you move into the interior, look for overnight lows anywhere from 5 to 10 below Eagle and Northway in the teens to 20 below region. 9 below around Fort Yukon, and 10 to 15 below for most of the North Slope, including Barrow and Wainwright. 3 below is expected in Nome, with Nunivak Island about 3 above. Most of the chain will be in the 30s overnight, with high temperatures there tomorrow approaching 40 for Adak and a few other surrounding regions. Most regions in southwest will be in the 30s tomorrow. Kodiak 38. Southeast, we expect highs tomorrow in the 20s and 30s. Sitka, one of the warmer spots at nearly 40 degrees. Prince William Sound in the 20s and 30s. In the Cook Inlet region, expect teens and 20s tomorrow. For the Middle Tanana Valley, lower teens there, 11 in Fairbanks, 6 in Eagle. Out around Galena, 3 above, 2 above in Nome, Shishmaref near 0, about the same there for Kivalina and Kotzebue, and 12 below for Barrow. Moving eastward toward Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse, temps will be closer to 10 below and 3 below, again with a possibility of blizzard conditions around Kaktovik. Here's a look at flying weather now. We expect to see IFR across a large part of the Brooks Range, the eastern Beaufort Seacoast, of course, with blizzard conditions settling in, and through the Bering Strait and just south of the western Aleutians. MVFR in the middle of the Gulf and through pockets around Anchorage there, with fog possible again tomorrow, all the way out toward Hope and then westward a little bit. And MVFR conditions to start up in southwest. Some of that breaks up in the morning, but you can see there are more areas of IFR, generally west of the Alaska Range, across the upper Yukon Valley, and across more places in the North Slope during the daytime tomorrow. And Aktuvik Pass, we expect to see that break into MVFR during the day, but a start at IFR there. And for Adigan Pass is likely. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect to see IFR conditions developing through the day, and the same goes for Rainy Pass through the afternoon. Windy Pass for now looks to be VFR, and the same goes for Isabel Pass. Smooth sailing there. Ventasta Pass, visual flight rules should be maintained. Same for Tanita Pass for your Wednesday. Portage Pass, IFR conditions to start. That may lift a little bit as we get into the afternoon and shift eastward. Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see marginal conditions develop in the day. Freezing levels indicate the coldest air is once again across the east, the interior, and the north, and warmer air is trying to gather out across the central and western chain, lifting northward with levels there across Adak and Atka, about 2,000 to 4,000 feet or so. Icing potential will follow the front below 7,000 feet there right now. Light to isolated moderate is possible. Expect colder weather to continue shifting southward. Above 5,000 feet for the Bristol Bay region, where light to isolated moderate is possible, generally just south of the Pribilofs, and then as you move out west, those levels go higher to about 8,000 feet and above. Our jet stream has changed its shape once again since the last time I spoke with you. So in the course of about a week or so, we've moved that upside shaped U a little bit further to the west. What does that do? That means more cold air is coming southward, as you've seen and heard me say already, and a lot of that will be pushed eastward into western Canada. But we have this low pressure system here across southwestern Alaska that is gathering some moisture and moving that northward into the Gulf, and also sending that into southeastern Alaska with a decent moisture pump well to our south. That's what's been feeding the Pacific Northwest with just several inches of snow there. And if you've been traveling into or out of the Pacific Northwest, you already know that's the case. But the moisture in the Gulf will be gathering across the next couple days. 9,000-foot winds show that north and westerly flow coming in across Kotzebue Sound into the interior and moving into western Canada. We'll also have that low pressure system here sitting just off of Cape Newenham and east of the Pribilofs. Wind speeds across the Gulf are running about 10 to 15 knots or so around the west and northwest. And we have a gentle east and northeasterly flow bending into the southern portions of southeast. Across the central and western chain, gales are expected across the west, and you can see at higher levels the wind speeds are picking up there from 40 to 60 knots. A little bit lower, they're not quite as intense, but still going strong at 45 to about 55 knots. Through the Bering Strait, northerlies continue to blow across St. Lawrence Island. We have a general west wind moving through the Alaska Peninsula. Light winds across the central Gulf, but you can see the winds picking up much closer to land, around 15 to 25 knots. And west and northwesterly winds are moving across the North Slope and the interior between 15 and 30 knots. Southeasterly winds are fairly light from the west and southwest, 10 to 15 there at 3,000 feet. So putting it all together for turbulence, we expect to see at least some chop across the middle Tanana Valley and northward into the central and upper Yukon Valley, and across the western Brooks Range below 6,000 feet, around Nome, out toward Tin City and Wales, St. Lawrence Island, all below about 6,000 feet for some light to isolated moderate. For the central and western chain, expect below 4,000 feet for some light to isolated moderate there, and through the Barren Islands out to about Lake Iliamna and the northern edge of Kodiak Island, perhaps Raspberry Island there in the southern tip of the Kenai Peninsula, including Kachemak Bay. That's a look at your aviation forecast. In just a few minutes, I'll be back with your ice update and your marine weather. Stay tuned.
Her name is Patty Wagstaff, one of the most celebrated aerobatic pilots of all time. Three-time U.S. National Aerobatic Champion, she is the first woman to win this title. Because of her achievements, Patty has been honored by the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum as a pioneer of flight, and her Goodrich Extra 260 aircraft occupies the same gallery at the Smithsonian as Amelia Earhart's Lockheed Vega.
I have to admit, what I do seems like a pretty dangerous way to make a living. I suppose that's part of the appeal, why so many people come out to see me fly and to see me take these risks. But as fellow pilots, I'll let you in on a little secret. There's risk, all right. As you know, anytime you climb into an aircraft, there's risk. But over the years, I've learned to minimize that risk by careful preparation, training, planning, common sense, and constant situational awareness. Attention to safety keeps me alive in the air. But safety doesn't begin at the top of an inverted loop. Safety begins on the ground before you get in your airplane.
As pilots, most of us have seen a great deal of change in airport operations over the past few years. Today, there are nearly 70 million tower operations annually, and the number is growing each year. Pilots are challenged with more and more complex air traffic procedures, more complicated airport layout design. More and more, it is an environment of very real risk. But just as Patty Wagstaff has developed strategies for mitigating risk in the air, pilots can do the same on the ground by following standard procedures, such as using airport diagrams and planning their taxi routes.
The great majority of runway incursions are caused by pilot error. And the great majority of those errors, more than 70%, are caused by general aviation pilots. Those of us who have been flying for a while remember that they didn't teach us much about runway safety back in the days when we were in training. In recent years, that's changed. The FAA has developed a number of educational programs and strategies to help pilots improve runway safety. In fact, with more than 650,000 pilots and more than 240,000 aircraft all conducting millions of operations around the clock, it's amazing how safe our airports are. But still, with the best of training, collisions can happen at any airport, at any time, to any pilot. We may be good pilots, but we are also human. And sometimes we make very human mistakes.
And ground Cessna 9308. Say again.
Runway incursions are most often the result of a loss of situational awareness. For a variety of reasons, the pilot becomes confused by the airport's signs and layout, or doesn't listen to or understand the controller's instructions, or simply fails to follow instructions.
Cessna 3 Sierra Papa.
Hold short, runway 26 left.
453 Sierra Papa, hold short, runway 26 left.
Cessna 3 Sierra Papa, you're over the whole line.
Often this is because he or she is unfamiliar with the airport, the pilot's fatigued, or is distracted by something in the cockpit.
You know what I was doing last night?
For a few critical seconds, pilots lose track of where they are in relation to their surroundings.
You can imagine how important it is for me to focus on situational awareness. In the air, my life depends on it. If I don't know precisely where I am and where I'm going, and the tasks required to get me there, the consequences could be catastrophic. And the same goes for you, and for me, on the ground.
One of the first keys to situational awareness is attention to detail even before you start your engine. Just as we always study area charts and weather information before we fly, it's important to be thoroughly familiar with the airport's layout before we taxi. Every airport is different, so it's important to obtain and study airport diagrams. Pay particular attention to complex or confusing runway and taxiway intersections and runway thresholds. Some airports publish hotspots on their airport diagrams. For example, intersections, where pilots should be especially vigilant. Obviously, we should make a similar study of the airport at our destination. Once you are thoroughly familiar with the airport layout, make sure you review the signs you will encounter as you taxi toward the active runway. Some simple phrases can help you remember what the signs mean. Black square, you're there. These black signs tell you which runway or taxiway you're on right now. Yellow array points the way. These yellow signs with black arrows point you toward a runway or a taxiway, or toward a destination, such as a ramp. If you see white numerals on a red sign, remember, red and white, runways in sight. This type of sign shows the hold position for the runway. Remember, yellow markings represent taxiways, and white markings represent runways.
Here's a look at today's sea ice edge as analyzed by our Alaska Sea Ice Program. And as you would expect, with northerly winds and much colder air to come, the sea ice edge will be expanding southward over the coming days. It's around 120 to 130 nautical miles from St. Paul to the north and east. There is some ice strips that's out here in this blue zone. That's the marginal ice zone, below 80% in concentration. The white areas are above 80%. It will probably reach St. Matthew in the rest of the week, so the ice will continue to shift south and west. You can see more ice is in Bristol Bay, and a larger section of high concentration ice is working past Callaghan Island there, west of the Clam Gulch region and heading south of Kenai. So more ice in Cook Inlet as well. You can always get the latest at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice for ice concentrations as well as sea surface temperatures and the forecast, as well as the seasonal outlook. For southeast, we expect to see light winds on the inside as we go into Wednesday, generally 10 knots with 2-foot seas in most areas there. For the outer coast, 15 to 20 knots should do the trick, more of an offshore flow south of Sitka, and we get into a south and easterly flow as we move out of Cross Sound and up toward Yakutat. Their seas will run around 5 to 6 feet. On Thursday, look for a west and northwest flow to develop, and that will bring the clouds and even some light precipitation closer to the outer coast, and in some cases maybe inland just a little bit. On the inner channels, we're looking for 10 to 15 knot winds, generally a northerly flow, but as you get towards Stevens Passage, that could flip around to more of a southerly flow as we get into Thursday. 2 to 3 foot seas expected on Thursday. For south central northeasterlies inside of Prince William Sound, light and variable wind over the ice in the northern Cook Inlet. It becomes north and northwesterly, moving down toward the Barren Islands. Westerlies over Kodiak Island at about 20 knots. 4 foot seas inside of Shelikof Strait, 6 foot seas in the western Gulf, and 5 foot seas as you move up toward Resurrection Bay. For Thursday, northwesterlies start to pick up over the Barrens, 30 to 35 knots there with 7 to 12 foot seas. Northerlies inside of Cook Inlet, northwesterlies over Kodiak Island at 30 knots. Northwesterlies pick up inside of Prince William Sound, 3 foot seas there on a 15 knot wind, and westerlies across the northern Gulf at 15 to 20 for Thursday. As we get into Wednesday and Thursday for the Alaska Peninsula, we're going to see a north and northwesterly flow for each day. Wednesday will be a little bit lighter. By Thursday, winds pick up to about 25 to 30 knots. We have ice inside of Bristol Bay, 7 foot seas down the Bering Sea coast on that northerly wind. By Thursday, 25 knots. And across the Pacific coast, 25 to 30 knots there. A 7 to 9 foot sea is expected on Thursday across the Alaska Peninsula. For the Aleutians, look for a south and easterly wind to pick up. We have gales out in the west tonight and into early tomorrow morning. 40 to 45 knot winds expected there. A southeasterly flow from Adak to Kiska, from Kiska to Attu. That's a northeasterly wind, 25 knots. 25 seas, I should say, and then a variable flow from Nikolsky to Unalaska, 15 knots with about a 5 to 7 foot sea there, 7 to 8 foot seas across the Pacific coast. As we get into Thursday, notice that north and easterly wind starts to move in a little bit more. We get 20 to 25 knots across the Bering Sea coast, 15 to 25 across the Pacific coast, with seas coming up to 19 feet. 18 to 17 foot seas out in the west on that 30 knot wind from Kiska to Attu. From Kiska to Adak, we're looking at about 9 to 18 foot seas there for your Thursday. Across the west coast, northerlies moving out of the Bering Strait, and you guessed it, it's going to be cold, and that again helps to push the ice a little bit further south and grow it even more. 20 to 30 knots across Nunivak Island toward St. Lawrence Island, 15 knot winds from Kuskokwim Delta out toward the Pribilofs with a 2 to 3 foot sea there on Wednesday. For Thursday, northerlies continue, 20 to 25 in all areas. You're looking at 6 foot seas around the Kuskokwim Delta out toward St. Matthew, and northeasterlies for St. Paul and St. George with a 5 foot sea there on Thursday. Across the North Slope, north and westerly winds will be strongest on Wednesday, especially for the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. Remember, blizzard conditions are going to be possible there from about 6 p.m. tonight until 6 p.m. tomorrow. Looking for poor visibility as well as falling snow as much as 3 inches, but that could drift and blow on 40 mile an hour sustained winds with stronger gusts up to 60. Northerlies will be outside of the Kotzebue Sound region about 25 knots, so not quite as bad out that way. And northerlies shift across the northwestern coast as we get into Thursday, 20 to 25 knots. We'll still hold on to those westerly winds across the eastern Beaufort Seacoast, but the winds diminish there down to about 20 knots. So the winds may not be as strong, and therefore blizzard conditions are not expected at this time for Thursday. As we look northward, a cold front is dropping southward. That is going to create those blizzard conditions across the eastern Beaufort Seacoast tonight. Many other areas up north will be dealing with snow and winds, but just not quite to that level. Look for periods of clear sky across the lower and middle Yukon Valley to be replaced by clouds as we move into Wednesday and eventually Thursday. Snow showers across southwest as an upper level disturbance turns into a cold front across the Bristol Bay region. That may generate an area of low pressure, which could help to create a better chance for some snow showers as we head into Wednesday morning, but it doesn't look to be a major ordeal. It does look like you'll see a few snowflakes. Across the northern Gulf, pockets of rain and snow there, especially inland as we get into Thursday. A better chance for some of that to reach into the outer coastal areas and northern parts of southeast, but by and large, most of southeast looks to be pretty dry as we get into Thursday. But the big picture includes a lot more cold air for many along the west coast, all the way from northwest to southwest Alaska. Cold air will be dropping south thanks to high pressure way up north, and those northerly winds will be felt well into the weekend, so plan on much colder weather all the way around. A few areas of snow and blowing snow are expected generally north of Fairbanks up toward the north coast. Low pressure gathers across the northern Gulf and could start to put in some snow showers into places around south central as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, so keep your eyes on that. Out west, continued periods of rain and mixed with snow, of course. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Snider. We'll see you right here again tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.